In the world of gospel music, some names shine brighter than others, not only because of their talent, but because of the way they touch lives. Guy Penrod and Wes Hampton are two such names that fans hold close to their hearts. For many years, they were a powerful part of the Gaither Vocal Band, a group that is known all over the world for lifting spirits through music. Together, their voices blended in harmony, creating songs that reached the brokenhearted, comforted those in grief, and inspired countless believers to draw closer to God. Guy's deep baritone voice and striking presence gave strength to every song, while Wes's smooth tenor added warmth and brightness. Their music was not just entertainment, it was ministry, and fans often described their performances as a true worship experience. But as time passed, people began to notice changes. The two men, once seen together on stage and in photos, seemed to disappear from each other's side. There were no more joint performances, no public appearances, and no new projects that included both of them. Fans started asking questions. Was there a falling out? Had something happened behind the scenes? Or was it simply life taking them in different directions? These whispers and speculations grew louder as the silence between them continued. At first, many people thought that Guy and Wes were simply taking a short break from working together. After all, musicians often step back for a while before returning to the spotlight. But as months turned into years, fans began to feel that something deeper was going on. The absence was noticeable, and in the close-knit world of gospel music, silence often speaks louder than words. Questions began to circulate in online communities, church gatherings, and among devoted Gaither fans. Were the two men no longer friends? Was there conflict within the group? Or were they both facing personal struggles that they were not ready to share with the world? What most people did not know at the time was that both Guy and Wes were walking through storms that had nothing to do with each other, but which shaped the silence between them. For Guy, the struggle came in the form of health challenges that threatened his voice, the very gift that had defined his ministry. For Wes, it was a painful misunderstanding that left him feeling judged and misrepresented. These personal battles were not easy, and as each man chose to deal with them in quiet ways, their distance from one another grew. What looked like separation from the outside was, in truth, two men trying to survive their own private trials. For Guy Penrod, the storm came suddenly. After years of traveling, performing, and pouring out his energy for others, his body finally sent him a warning sign that could not be ignored. During one rehearsal, he found himself struggling to breathe and unable to keep singing. Alarmed, those close to him encouraged him to see a doctor. The diagnosis was serious vocal strain and extreme fatigue. His powerful voice, which had inspired millions, was at risk. Doctors warned him that if he did not rest, he could lose the very thing that made his ministry possible. This was not just about a career, it was about survival. Guy had spent years giving everything on stage, but he realized he had not been giving himself the chance to rest and listen to God. Later, he would confess that he was singing louder than he was listening, a statement that revealed how exhausted his soul had become. With great difficulty, Guy made the decision to step back from the spotlight. It was not an easy choice for a man so deeply connected to music and ministry, but it was necessary. Away from the stage, in the stillness, he began to experience healing, not only for his voice, but also for his spirit. It was a time of reflection, prayer, and rediscovering the importance of quiet strength. While Guy was dealing with physical and emotional exhaustion, Wes Hampton faced a different kind of trial. His storm came in the form of misunderstanding and judgment. Years earlier, Wes had exchanged private messages encouraging young Christian musicians, guiding them as they stepped into ministry. These conversations were innocent, filled with advice and encouragement, but they resurfaced online in a twisted and misleading way. Taken out of context, some people in the gospel community began to question his intentions and even accused him of compromising his faith. For someone as devoted to ministry as Wes, these accusations were deeply hurtful. He knew the truth, but instead of fighting back loudly, Wes chose a different path. He decided to remain quiet, focusing on prayer and trusting God to defend him. Sometimes silence is the only answer love can give, he later reflected. His choice to respond with grace instead of anger showed his deep faith, but it also created distance. To outsiders, his silence looked like withdrawal, but in reality, it was a way of protecting his heart and holding on to peace. Like Guy, Wes was not walking away from ministry. He was simply trying to survive a season of pain and misunderstanding. During this time, the silence between Guy and Wes became more obvious. They were no longer seen together, and their absence from each other's lives led fans to believe there might be bitterness or conflict. But the truth was very different. Both men were walking their own difficult paths, and neither had the energy to reach out to the other. A mutual friend later explained that there was no anger between them, only brokenness. They were simply too weighed down by their individual struggles to carry one another's burdens. The silence was not a wall of division, but rather the quiet space created by two men trying to find healing. This is an important truth that many people missed. In the gospel world, where fans are used to seeing leaders always smiling and ministering, the idea that they might also feel exhausted, misunderstood, or broken is often forgotten. But Guy and Wes are human, just like everyone else. They needed time apart, not because they had lost love for each other, but because they needed to recover. Their story shows that distance does not always mean division. It can also mean survival. The turning point in their story came unexpectedly. Both Guy and Wes were invited to a private men's retreat in the Highlands, without knowing that the other would also be attending. It was not a planned reunion, nor was it organized for publicity. It was simply God's way of bringing two broken brothers back together. On the second night of the retreat, during a worship session, the group began to sing the hymn "Great is Thy Faithfulness." As the voices rose in worship, Guy looked across the room and saw Wes, tears streaming down his face. In that moment, years of silence melted away. Without hesitation, Guy walked over, placed his hand on Wes's shoulder, and whispered, "I miss my brother." Wes, holding back his own tears, replied softly, "I never stopped being one." No cameras captured the moment. No press release was made. It was just two men, broken yet healing, choosing forgiveness and brotherhood once again. That simple exchange carried more power than any public statement ever could. It was a reminder that true reconciliation often happens quietly, away from the spotlight, and in the presence of God. Since that moment of reconciliation, both Guy and Wes have continued their ministries, though not always in the same way as before. Guy slowly returned to music, releasing a personal EP titled "Quiet Strength," which reflected his journey of rest and healing. He now focuses more on his family and on smaller, quieter projects that bring peace rather than pressure. Wes, on the other hand, has dedicated himself to mentoring young worship leaders, offering guidance and encouragement to those who are often overlooked. Though they no longer share the stage as frequently as they once did, their bond has been restored in a deeper way. They may not need public performances to prove their friendship, because reconciliation is not always about appearances. It is about the heart. Their story shows that healing does not always lead back to the spotlight. Sometimes it leads to quieter, more meaningful paths. For both men, this new season has been about serving in ways that are authentic, even if they are less visible. And for fans, the reassurance is that their bond of brotherhood has not been broken. It has simply changed shape. What makes the story of Guy Penrod and Wes Hampton so powerful is that it is not a story of scandal, rivalry, or betrayal. Instead, it is a story of humanity, grace, and restoration. Too often, fans expect their favorite singers and leaders to be perfect, forgetting that they too face struggles, doubts, and pain. Guy and Wes remind us that even those who guide others in worship can grow weary, be misjudged, and feel broken. But their journey also shows that by leaning on God's grace, restoration is possible. They chose not to let gossip define their story. They chose forgiveness over bitterness, silence over retaliation, and grace over conflict. Their years with the Gaither Vocal Band already secured their legacy in gospel music, but what makes their story even more beautiful is the way they handled trials offstage. For more than a decade, they prayed together, supported one another, and shared unforgettable moments of ministry. And when silence came, it did not destroy their bond. Instead, it shaped them, teaching them the value of rest, reflection, and quiet healing. Looking back, the absence of Guy and Wes from each other's lives once caused concern and speculation. But today, their story stands as a testimony, not a tragedy. They walked through exhaustion, misunderstanding, and silence, but they came out stronger and more rooted in grace. Their paths may look different now, Guy focusing on family and personal music, Wes guiding younger leaders, but their connection remains. They remind us that true friendship and brotherhood do not depend on constant visibility. Sometimes the strongest bonds are the ones that survive distance and silence. For fans, their story is a lesson in patience and faith. Just because leaders step back from the stage does not mean they have fallen away. Often, it means they are finding strength to continue in new and meaningful ways. The legacy of Guy and Wes is not just in their harmonies, but in the testimony of their lives, a testimony that proves that healing is possible, forgiveness is powerful, and grace is greater than any rumor. In the end, the question, what really happened between Guy Penrod and Wes Hampton, has a simple answer: life happened. Life with all its trials, misunderstandings, and struggles. But more importantly, grace happened too. Their journey reminds us that even in seasons of silence, God is at work. For Guy, healing came through rest and rediscovering the importance of listening to God. For Wes, healing came through patience, silence, and choosing grace over defense. And for both, healing came in the form of reconciliation, not on stage for the world to see, but in a quiet retreat where God brought two brothers back together. Today, they may not sing side by side as often, but their bond remains strong. Their story is not about what was lost, but about what was quietly restored. For fans and for anyone facing their own storms, their journey is a reminder that silence is not the end. It can be the beginning of healing, brotherhood, and faith renewed. While their story together is powerful, it is also important to recognize the individual legacies that Guy Penrod and Wes Hampton have built over the years. Guy has long been admired for his unique voice and his striking appearance. His long hair and strong stage presence made him stand out in the world of gospel music. But beyond the appearance and talent, what truly defined Guy was his sincerity and his ability to connect deeply with audiences. Every note he sang carried not just musical skill, but genuine faith, and that authenticity is what made him beloved. His solo career, after leaving the Gaither Vocal Band, further showed his versatility and his heart for ministry. Albums like Breathe Deep and later hymns were not only successful, but also deeply personal, reminding listeners of his deep commitment to worship. Wes Hampton, on the other hand, has been celebrated for his smooth tenor and uplifting personality. He brought warmth to the stage, often being the light in the group's performances. Beyond singing, Wes's gift has always been his ability to encourage and mentor others. His work mentoring young worship leaders has created a ripple effect that may be even greater than his time on stage. Both men, in their own ways, have left lasting legacies. And when you put those legacies together, you see a picture of what true ministry looks like. Not always glamorous or perfect, but honest, faith-filled, and deeply impactful. For fans who followed the journey of Guy and Wes closely, the years of silence were painful and confusing. But looking at their story now, it becomes clear that their silence carried important lessons. First, it reminds us that even leaders and role models need rest, healing, and time away from the public eye. In a world that constantly demands visibility, it is easy to forget that stepping back does not mean stepping away from faith or calling. Guy and Wes showed